My name is Elena Moore. I'm 32 years old, and I didn't know my life was about to split into a before and an after until my husband started looking straight through me like I was just another piece of furniture he'd grown tired of. If someone had told me 5 years ago that my marriage would end in silence instead of screaming, I would have laughed. Back then, Daniel, 34, and I were that couple. Good jobs, a warm, sun-filled house, a bright, curious little girl named Lily, who still believed the world was safe. From the outside, we looked solid. But marriages don't collapse all at once. They rot quietly, conversation by conversation, until one day you realize you're sharing a bed with someone who stopped seeing you months ago. It started with his phone. At first, it was nothing, a quick glance, a notification. Then it became permanent. Daniel used to look up when I came home. Now his eyes barely lifted from the screen. I'd talk about my day, work, traffic, Lily's preschool art project taped crookedly to the fridge. Uh-huh, he'd say. That was it. Half the time he had earbuds in, pretending not to hear me. The dinners that used to be filled with stupid jokes and weekend plans turned into silence, chewing, and the blue glow of his phone lighting up his face. One night, I reached across the table and gently took his hand. Can we please just have one meal without your phone? He pulled his hand back like I'd crossed a line. You're overreacting, he said. I'm just checking something real quick. He said that every night. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded more. But I didn't. Instead, I watched his half smile, the one he used when he wanted a conversation to die, and felt something inside me quietly disconnect. I've just been tired lately, he added, already reaching for the remote. That was the moment I realized I was alone in a marriage that technically still existed. I tried to fix it for Lily. I planned a date night, his favorite restaurant, babysitter booked, everything. He canceled the morning of. Not in the mood, he said. Crowds stress me out. Funny how I never stressed him out before. I'm not the type to whine or play the victim. I believe in fixing problems. But marriage isn't a solo job. You can't save something when the other person already checked out. I thought about leaving more than once. Even looked up divorce lawyers late one night after he called me boring for wanting to watch a movie together. But then Lily would run into my arms, that tiny smile lighting up her whole face. And I stayed. Because mothers don't get the luxury of walking away when things get hard. Around that time, Daniel accused me of being distant. The irony almost made me laugh. He said I was always tired, always distracted, always working. Meanwhile, he hadn't touched me in months. When I pointed that out, he rolled his eyes. You're imagining things. That phrase, you're imagining things, would come back to haunt me later. The night it finally hit me, Lily grabbed my face while I tucked her into bed. Mommy happy? She asked softly. I smiled. Always, baby. But the truth? I wasn't. And I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. 2 weeks later, Daniel woke up cheerful for the first time in months. Breakfast made, coffee brewed, a kiss on my cheek. That should have been my first red flag. Hey, he said casually, you remember my sister Maya? My stomach tightened. I nodded. She's going through a rough time, he continued. Divorce, lost her place. She's basically living out of her car. I already knew where this was going. And you want her to stay here, I said flatly. He blinked, like I wasn't supposed to catch on so fast. Just until she gets back on her feet, he said. She's family. I set my mug down slowly. No. That was the first time I said it out loud. And it wouldn't be the last. Daniel didn't argue right away. He just stood there in the kitchen, one hand wrapped around his coffee mug, staring at me like he was waiting for me to realize I was being unreasonable. That look, calm on the surface, judgment underneath, used to make me second-guess myself. Not anymore. No, I repeated, slower this time. Daniel, we're not doing that. His jaw tightened. He leaned back against the counter like he was about to deliver a lecture. Elena, he said, she has nowhere to go. That's not true, I shot back. She has friends. She has your parents. She can get a short-term rental. She can stay at a motel. She can do literally anything other than move into our home and turn our life upside down. He exhaled, like I was exhausting him. She's my sister. And Lily is our daughter, I said. This house is her stability. Our marriage is already fragile. Adding another adult into the middle of it is gasoline on a fire. Daniel's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. Wow, he said quietly. So you'd rather my sister sleep in her car than be inconvenienced for a few weeks. There it was. The moral guilt trip. The one that made you sound heartless if you didn't immediately agree. I swallowed down the anger that rose hot in my throat. Don't do that, I said. Don't frame it like I'm cruel. You and I both know she's not helpless. She's going through a divorce, Daniel snapped. Have you ever been divorced, Elena? No, I said. But I've been living with someone who treats me like I don't exist, and I'm still showing up every day anyway." His eyes flashed, annoyance, maybe guilt, but it passed fast. He set his mug down with a quiet clink. "Fine," he said. 1 month. I blinked. "Excuse me?" 1 month, he repeated, already sounding like he'd decided. "She stays in the guest room. She figures things out. Then she's gone." He said it like it was a compromise. Like my boundaries were a suggestion that could be negotiated down to something smaller. I stared at him for a long moment, feeling my stomach twist. Not just because he was forcing this, but because for the first time in months, he sounded passionate about something. Not about us. Not about me. About her. "Okay," I said finally, because I knew how this would go if I fought harder. 1 month, that's it. And we write it down. We say it clearly to her, no stretching it. Daniel's shoulders relaxed like he'd won. "Thank you," he said, but it didn't feel like gratitude. It felt like a warning. Maya arrived 2 days later. When I opened the front door, I almost didn't recognize her from the photos Daniel had shown me years ago. Holiday dinners, family weddings, the occasional awkward group shot where everyone looked like they didn't really like each other, but smiled anyway. In those photos, Maya had looked soft, normal, a little plain. Now she walked up our driveway like she was stepping onto a stage. Tall, fit, perfectly styled hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. Sunglasses so expensive they looked like they should have their own security detail. And behind her, a pickup truck backed in with the bed loaded down like she was moving into a new life. Not crashing temporarily. Gym bags. Plastic bins labeled personal. A rolled-up rug. A giant suitcase with scuffed corners like it had traveled more than she was admitting. Daniel stepped around me, suddenly energized. "Maya," he said, grinning. She threw herself into his arms like she hadn't seen him in years. "Oh my God," she laughed, loud and bright. "Danny, I missed you." Danny. I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because I hadn't called him anything affectionate in months. Not because I didn't want to, but because he didn't respond when I tried. Maya pulled back and looked me up and down like she was scanning a menu. "And you must be Elena," she said, still smiling, but her eyes were sharp. Wow. Daniel really married up. It sounded like a compliment. It didn't feel like one. "Hi," I said, forcing politeness. "Guest room is upstairs, first door on the left." She turned her head toward the house and whistled. "Nice place," she said, then glanced back at Daniel. "You're doing well for yourself." Not you both, not your family. Just him." Daniel laughed. "Come on, let me help you with your stuff." Maya's smile widened. "Of course you will." And just like that, they disappeared inside, leaving me standing in my own doorway, feeling like someone had nudged me out of frame. For the first hour, I tried to stay neutral. I told myself I was being sensitive, that this was just an adjustment. But then I watched Maya move through the house. She kicked off her shoes by the couch like she lived there. She walked into the kitchen and opened cabinets without asking. She picked up Lily's sippy cup, wrinkled her nose, and set it down like it offended her. And Lily? Lily was instantly fascinated. My daughter was the kind of kid who loved attention, loved energy. And Maya, whether it was real or not, was a fireworks show. "Hi, sweetie," Maya cooed, crouching down to Lily's level. "I'm Auntie Maya." Lily stared at her for 2 seconds, then smiled so wide her cheeks puffed out. "Aya," Lily chirped, like she couldn't quite say the M. Maya laughed like it was adorable. "It's okay," she said. "You can call me whatever you want." Something about that made my skin tighten. Because children took that literally. And adults who wanted to replace you loved leaving doors open. Daniel watched it like it was the cutest thing he'd seen all year. For a moment, I almost felt relieved. Maybe this would help. Maybe Lily having someone new around would lighten the mood in the house. Maybe Daniel being happier would make him come back. But then the day unfolded, and the relief turned into a slow, creeping dread. That evening, I came down after bathing Lily and putting her into pajamas. I expected dinner to be chaotic, Lily whining for snacks, Daniel half listening, Maya complaining about something. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and stopped short. They were already eating. Daniel was laughing. Maya was sitting on the stool closest to him, shoulder angled toward him, knee turned slightly in his direction, like her body had made a decision before her words did. My plate wasn't set out. Not even a napkin. Daniel looked up, surprised in a fake way. "Oh," he said. "Hey." Maya turned, smiling. "We didn't know when you'd come down." I stared at the table, at Daniel's fork moving, at Maya's wine glass, at the empty space where I normally sat. It shouldn't have mattered. It was just dinner. But it did matter, because it wasn't an accident. It was a preview. "There's more in the pan if you're hungry," Daniel added, like he was offering me scraps. My throat tightened. I forced myself to breathe. Yeah, I said softly. I see that. I walked to the stove, served myself, and stood at the counter. Behind me, the two of them kept talking like I wasn't there. Maya's laughter carried into the room like perfume, sweet, heavy, impossible to ignore. Lily toddled in, rubbing her eyes, and immediately ran toward Maya instead of me. Aya, she squealed. Maya picked her up effortlessly, bouncing her like she'd done it 100 times. There's my girl, Maya said. My girl. Daniel laughed again, and something inside me went cold. Not rage, not jealousy, something worse. Recognition. Because I'd seen this before. Not in my own life, but in stories. In slow-motion disasters where the person you trust hands a stranger the keys and then acts shocked when the house gets robbed. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I stood in the hallway staring at the guest room door. Maya's suitcase was half unpacked. Her clothes were hanging in the closet like she planned to stay. I could hear her voice through the cracked door, low and playful. Daniel's voice answered her. I couldn't make out the words. But I didn't need to. It sounded intimate. Too comfortable. Too familiar for day two. I walked back to my bedroom and lay next to Daniel, who rolled over and fell asleep in under a minute. His phone glowed on the nightstand. And I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me. My house, my marriage, my life, feeling for the first time like I was the guest. And Maya? Maya was moving in like she'd been invited to take my place. The shift didn't happen all at once. It crept in quietly, like mold behind a wall you don't check until the smell becomes impossible to ignore. By the end of the first week, Maya wasn't a guest anymore. She was installed. She woke up before me and Daniel, already dressed, already energetic. Some mornings I'd come downstairs to find her at the kitchen island, sipping coffee from my mug, scrolling through her phone like she'd always belonged there. Daniel didn't say anything. He just smiled. She's helping out, he told me once, when I pointed out she'd reorganized the pantry without asking. She's bored, he said another time, when I noticed she'd folded laundry, including mine, and stacked it on our bed like she was the lady of the house. She's just trying to contribute, he added, when she started picking Lily up from preschool, so I wouldn't have to rush after work. That one made my stomach drop. I want to pick up my daughter, I said. That's not a chore I need help with. Daniel sighed. Elena, relax. She's just being supportive. Supportive. That word became his shield. And every time he used it, I felt myself being edged further out of my own family. Lily adored Maya. That part was undeniable. Maya played on the floor with her, let her climb all over her, bought her little toys, just because. Daniel noticed too. See? He said one night, watching Lily giggle as Maya tossed a stuffed animal into the air. She's good for her. I didn't respond. Because something about the way Maya looked at Lily, possessive, proud, made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain yet. And Maya noticed everything. She noticed when Lily reached for me. She noticed when Daniel stood too close. She noticed when I walked into a room and adjusted herself accordingly. Sometimes she'd step back, suddenly respectful. Other times, she leaned in closer, like she wanted me to see. The moment it broke happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd taken the day off work because Lily had a mild fever the night before. Nothing serious, just enough that daycare asked us to keep her home. I came downstairs to find Maya in the living room with Lily, sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys. Daniel was at work. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stood there for a second, watching them. Maya was showing Lily how to stack blocks, her voice soft, sing-songy. Careful, she said gently. See, like this. Lily laughed, knocked the tower over, then looked up at Maya with that wide, trusting expression that only toddlers have. Mama, Lily said happily, holding up a block. Mama, help. The word hit me like a slap. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from shock. I waited for correction, for Maya to laugh and say, no, sweetheart, that's Mommy. Instead, she froze, just for half a second. Then she smiled. Of course, Maya said warmly. Mama, help. I stepped forward so fast my foot hit the coffee table. No, I said sharply. Lily. Both of them looked up. Maya's expression shifted, subtle, practiced. Oh, she said lightly. She probably just meant me helping her. Kids get confused. Confused. I dropped to my knees beside Lily, heart pounding. Lily, I said softly, forcing calm into my voice. Who's Mama? She looked between us. Then she pointed. At Maya. Mama, she said again. Something inside me cracked. I scooped Lily into my arms, holding her too tightly for a second before forcing myself to loosen my grip. I'm Mama, I said gently. Okay? I'm Mama. Lily frowned, confused now, sensing the tension she didn't understand. Maya stood up slowly. Wow, she said, eyebrows raised. You don't have to freak out. It's just a word. It's not just a word, I snapped. Daniel walked in right then, briefcase still in his hand. What's going on? He asked. Maya turned to him instantly, voice sweet, wounded. Lily called me Mama, she said, like it was an accident that happened to her. Elena's kind of losing it. Daniel looked at me, not at Lily, at me. Seriously? He said. She's 2. You're making this a thing. I stared at him. She just called another woman Mama, I said slowly. And that doesn't bother you? He shrugged. She's around Maya all day. Of course she's confused. Then maybe Maya shouldn't be playing mom in my house, I said. The temperature in the room dropped. Maya crossed her arms. I'm not playing anything. I'm just helping. Daniel rubbed his face. Elena, you're being paranoid. That word again. Paranoid. Like my instincts as a mother were a malfunction. I looked at Lily, who was clinging to me now, thumb in her mouth. Then I looked at Maya, at the faint curve of her smile. And for the first time, I didn't see a guest. I saw a woman testing boundaries. Carefully, deliberately. That night, Daniel and I argued in whispers in our bedroom, while Maya's door stayed conveniently closed down the hall. You embarrassed her, Daniel said. She embarrassed me, I shot back. She let our daughter call her Mama. She didn't encourage it. She didn't stop it. He shook his head. You're reading too much into this. No, I said quietly. I'm finally reading it clearly. He scoffed. You need help if you think there's something inappropriate going on. That word landed harder than he meant it to. Inappropriate, I repeated. So let me ask you this. Would you be okay if my brother acted like that with Lily? Daniel went silent, just for a beat. Then his jaw tightened. That's different. How? I pressed. Tell me how. He didn't answer. He just rolled over, turning his back to me. That was the moment I stopped trying to convince him, because I realized something terrifying. He wasn't blind. He was choosing not to see. The next morning, I started writing things down. Dates, times, who picked Lily up, who fed her, who put her to bed. I noticed patterns. Maya and Daniel disappearing into the kitchen together, their voices lowering when I walked in. Her hand resting on his arm a second too long. Her sitting too close on the couch. None of it was obvious enough to confront. But all of it was wrong. And the worst part? Every time I looked at Lily, I wondered what she was absorbing. Who she thought her family was now. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. If Daniel wanted to pretend this was normal, I'd let him. Because I'd already decided something. I was done guessing. The next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be careful. And it would change everything. Once you stop hoping things will get better, your vision sharpens. That's what no one tells you. Love blurs. Denial softens edges. Hope fills in gaps that shouldn't be filled. But the moment I accepted that Daniel was no longer on my side, everything snapped into focus. I stopped reacting. I stopped asking. And I started watching. Maya and Daniel didn't hide anymore. Not really. They didn't need to. Because any time I raised a concern, Daniel brushed it off like dust on a shelf. You're exhausted. You're stressed. You're seeing patterns that aren't there. Gaslighting doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes wrapped in calm voices and reasonable words. I noticed how Maya's schedule mirrored Daniel's. When he left early, she did too. When he came home late, she wasn't around either. They always had explanations. Gym, errands, meeting a friend. But the timing? Too clean, too practiced. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found a receipt tucked into Daniel's jacket pocket. Hotel bar, 20 minutes away. Timestamp, 11:52 p.m. My hands went cold. When I asked him about it, he didn't even hesitate. Oh, that? He said casually. Work thing. Client dinner. At midnight? I asked. He shrugged. You know how networking is. I nodded and wrote it down. I started backing everything up. Screenshots, photos, receipts. I installed visible security cameras in the living room and kitchen. Nothing hidden, nothing illegal. When Daniel asked why, I smiled. For safety, I said, for Lily. He rolled his eyes but didn't stop me. That told me more than his words ever could. Within days, I had footage. Not sex, not kissing. Something worse. Intimacy that thought it was invisible. Maya brushing crumbs off Daniel's shirt. Daniel standing behind her while she cooked, hands lingering at her waist. Her laughing, resting her palm flat against his chest like it belonged there. I didn't cry. I felt sick, like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to witness. Not because it was private, but because it was wrong on a fundamental level. And then I noticed something else. Their reflections. Whenever they were together, they looked relieved, like they didn't have to pretend. The confirmation came from the last person I expected. Daniel's father, Richard. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since Daniel started forgetting family dinners. I asked him to meet me for coffee. When he walked in, he looked tired, older than I remembered. He sat across from me and studied my face for a long moment. "This is about Daniel," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "and Maya." His jaw tightened. I slid my phone across the table and played a short clip. No sound, just images. Maya laughing, Daniel's hand on her waist, the closeness that refused to explain itself away. Richard stared, longer than I expected. When he finally looked up, his eyes were glassy. "I was afraid of this," he said. My heart pounded. "Afraid of what?" He exhaled slowly. "There's something you don't know," he said. "Something Daniel should have told you years ago." I didn't speak. I didn't blink. "Maya isn't his biological sister," Richard continued. "She was adopted. My wife and I took her in when Daniel was 10. The cafe noise faded. Not because it made it better, but because it made everything worse. "You raised them as siblings," I said, my voice flat. "Yes," he said, "that's what matters." I nodded. "So he's been using that word, sister, as a shield," I said. Richard closed his eyes. "I noticed things years ago," he admitted. "The way she watched him, the way he protected her. I told myself I was imagining it. Paranoid. The same word." I leaned back in my chair, feeling something inside me harden. "He let my daughter call her mama," I said quietly. Richard flinched. "That's why I'm here," I continued, "because I'm filing for divorce, and I'm taking Lily with me." He looked at me, really looked this time. "You'll have my support," he said without hesitation. "I'll testify. I won't let this be spun into something it's not." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "Thank you," I said, "for believing me." He shook his head slowly. I should have stopped it sooner. When I got home, Daniel and Maya were sitting on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. They looked up when I walked in. Too casual, too confident. I stood there for a moment, just watching them. Not angry, not heartbroken. Finished. That night, I backed everything up. Printed copies. Cloud storage. A separate email Daniel didn't know existed. I emailed my lawyer. "We're ready," because I wasn't going to confront them. Confrontation gives liars time to adapt. I was going to let the truth arrive all at once. Cold, undeniable, and devastating. They thought they were playing house. They didn't realize the house was already on fire, and I was about to let it burn. I didn't warn Daniel. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't demand answers. I let him believe he was winning. That was the mistake liars always made. They assumed silence meant surrender. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Ordinary, quiet. The kind of morning where nothing looks dangerous until it's too late. I was in the kitchen cutting strawberries for Lily's breakfast when the doorbell rang. Daniel glanced at the clock. "Who's that?" "I don't know," I said calmly. "Why don't you answer it?" He opened the door, still in his socks, coffee in hand. The man standing there wore a suit and carried a thick envelope. "Daniel Moore?" he asked. "Yes?" "You've been served." The color drained from Daniel's face. "What is this?" he snapped, flipping through the papers. I didn't look up from the cutting board. "Divorce," I said. "And temporary custody filings." Maya came down the stairs just in time to hear that. Her smile vanished. "What?" she said sharply. "What are you talking about?" Daniel turned to me, panic already leaking through the cracks. "Elena, are you serious right now?" I finally faced him. "You let our daughter call another woman mama," I said evenly. "You lied to me. You moved your girlfriend into my house and expected me to swallow it." Maya laughed, high, sharp, defensive. "This is insane," she said. "We didn't do anything." "Don't," I replied, holding up my phone. I pressed play. The screen filled with footage. Daniel's hand at her waist, her fingers tracing his collarbone. The way they leaned into each other when they thought no one was watching. Daniel's mouth opened. Closed. "You installed cameras?" he whispered. "I told you I did," I said. "You just didn't think I'd look." Maya's face twisted. "This is an invasion of privacy." "It's my house," I said, "and my lawyer already approved it." That's when the second knock came. Daniel turned again, frantic. When the door opened this time, Richard stood there. Daniel froze. "Dad," he said, "what are you doing here?" Richard didn't answer him. He looked at Maya, then at Daniel, then at me. "Elena showed me everything," he said quietly. Maya stepped back. "This is none of your business." Richard's eyes hardened. "It became my business when you dragged a child into it." Daniel finally snapped. "Enough," he yelled. "This isn't what it looks like." Richard's voice cut through him like a blade. "You let your daughter call her mama." Silence slammed into the room. Daniel looked down. Maya didn't. "She was confused," Maya said. "You're all overreacting." "No," Richard said. "You crossed a line that should never exist." Maya's mask cracked. "You adopted me," she shot back. "You don't get to judge." Richard flinched, but didn't back down. "I raised you," he said, "as a daughter, as his sister, and what you've done is unforgivable." Daniel turned on his father. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the child's side," Richard replied. Something you failed to do. Daniel's hands clenched. You think you can just take Lily? He snapped at me. You won't win. I slid the second folder across the counter. Hotel receipts, timestamps, witness statements. You already lost, I said calmly. That's when Maya screamed. You ruined everything, she shouted at me. You're jealous. You couldn't keep your husband happy. Daniel turned toward me, rage flashing. You spying, manipulating. He stepped forward. Too close. I didn't move. Get out, I said. He laughed bitterly. You can't kick me out of my own house. Yes, I can, I replied. It's in my name, and you know that. Maya lunged for him. Daniel, stop! He shook her off. That was when he swung. I didn't scream. I ducked. The punch grazed my shoulder, not my face. Before he could react, Richard stepped between us. That's enough, he said. Get your things. Both of you. Maya stared at him in disbelief. You're choosing her? I'm choosing what's right, he said. They packed in silence. 2 duffel bags, no explanations, no apologies. When the door finally shut behind them, the house felt lighter, not happy, clean. Richard sat at the table, staring at the floor. You protected your daughter, he said quietly. I'm proud of you. I nodded. It didn't feel like victory, but it felt like control. And that was enough, for now. The silence after they left wasn't empty. It was clean. No tension humming in the walls, no forced laughter, no footsteps I had to brace myself for. Just space. Richard stayed for a while after Daniel and Maya drove off. He helped me put Lily's toys back where they belonged, the way they'd been before everything went wrong, before my daughter's world had started bending around other people's lies. When he finally stood to leave, he rested a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, he said, no matter how much they try to twist it. I nodded. I just want her safe. And she will be, he replied. I'll make sure of it. That promise mattered more than he knew. The legal process moved faster than I expected. When you have documentation, clear, organized, undeniable, there isn't much room for theatrics. Daniel tried it first. He told his lawyer I was unstable, that I'd imagined the relationship, that Maya was just helping. But facts don't care about tone. Hotel receipts, video timestamps, witness testimony, and most damning of all, his own father. The judge listened carefully, flipping through pages, watching the clips without expression. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm. Mr. Moore, he said, you demonstrated repeated poor judgment and a failure to prioritize your child's emotional well-being. Daniel opened his mouth. The judge raised a hand. Custody will be awarded to Mrs. Moore. Full custody. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes for a second and let my lungs fill all the way for the first time in months. Daniel was granted limited, supervised visitation. Maya wasn't mentioned at all. She didn't need to be. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. Healing never does. Lily had questions at first. Where Daddy? Where Aya? I answered honestly, but gently. Daddy lives somewhere else now, and Maya doesn't live with us. She accepted it faster than I expected. Children often do when the adults finally stop lying. We started therapy together, drawing sessions, play conversations. The therapist told me Lily was resilient. I already knew that. She came from me. Weeks passed. Then months. The house began to feel like ours again. Not a battlefield. Not a stage. A home. One evening, after Lily fell asleep on the couch, clutching her stuffed bear, I sat there watching her breathe. Steady, calm. No confusion in her face. No tension in her small body. Just peace. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I made a mistake. I left her. Please, let me talk to Lily. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I turned the phone face down. Some doors don't reopen. Not when a child's safety lives on the other side. Months later, I ran into Rachel, a coworker I'd barely spoken to during the chaos. You look lighter, she said, smiling carefully. I am, I replied. We started talking more after that. Not dating, not rushing. Just 2 people who understood what it meant to survive something messy and come out quieter on the other side. One afternoon, Lily ran up to us in the yard holding a dandelion. For you, she said proudly. Rachel thanked her. I watched my daughter laugh and realized something. Peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives when your child sleeps without fear, when your house stops holding its breath, when you stop wondering what's happening behind closed doors. Daniel and Maya burned everything down, but they didn't take what mattered. I walked away with my daughter, my home, and myself. And for the first time since before the rot began, that felt like more than enough.